Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us Team Mosso at the 1916 Company. That is Team Mosso at the 1916company.com for pricing. Today, we discuss a 2021 reinvention of a perennial classic, the evergreen Omega Speedmaster Professional Moonwatch. Lots changed stylistically, in bracelet terms, and mechanically that year. This is what's known as the Sapphire Sandwich, as we have a sapphire crystal not used by astronauts over the dial, but then we have a second one that gives us a view of the still new 3861 Master Chronometer Caliber. So this is the first Master Chronometer Moonwatch, though you would not know it by appearances, as it's designed to be a little bit retro. The touchstone for the design was the 4th generation Moonwatch, or 4th generation Speedmaster Professional, which was the 105012, which actually went to the moon with the Apollo astronauts. In terms of size, it's still a 42, but we now have a pivoted end-link bracelet that wears smaller, so 42 millimeters in diameter, 13.5 millimeters thick, and then from lug tip to lug tip, 47.1 millimeters with a 20 millimeter spacing between the lugs. Without the solid end link of the previous version of the watch, you can see how I don't have any flare. I can pull the bracelet straight down out of the lug, which really mitigates some of the fit issues that the prior one would have had, as the end links of the prior bracelet stretched about 53.5 millimeters lug to lug. Now the watch is just 47.1, making this a lot more viable on a smaller wrist and even on ladies' wrists. So I believe you could wear this watch as is on a wrist of 14 centimeters circumference, no problem. Maybe even 13 and a half if your wrist is more oval than flat. You can see down the barrel, the edges of the lugs are nowhere near the edge of my wrist, and I am pulling the strap fairly tight. You can also see that the lugs are not over the edge of my wrist from the top, which exaggerates the width of the watch. Now, it's not super thick, but it does have a little bit of a cantilever to the bezel, so just keep that in mind if you want to wear it with a really tight cuff. You might need to give your sleeve a little bit of help up and over the side of the watch. In terms of the bracelet design, it definitely looks vintage. We have this short link design with pivoted end links, and maybe it's got a little bit more play in it. We've gone in a direction that almost feels more like what we consider a dress watch in contemporary terms. And it's definitely a sports watch bracelet, but it does have some of the small cross-section profiling of a dress bracelet, and then it also has some of the souplesse, as it's really flexible and very comfortable. We have a conforming end link, not Nautilus levels of integration, but it closes the gap to the case, and then a taper down toward the clasp. You can see the cross sections here are oval. We have many removable links fixed by screws, so you're going to get a good fit. We have polished intermediates, satin finished primaries, and a thick gauge single fold swing arm. We have a clasp, again with a vintage look, a little bit of satination, some polished highlights, and even a tiny amount of media blast around the Omega logo. Twin trigger release, so you press the triggers, it pops open. There is a little push button here that gives you a small amount of adjustment. It's a micro adjust that is in and out by means of a push button that locks and unlocks it. So in addition to the many removable links, you always have that little integral quick adjuster to fine-tune the fit. Taking a look at the case, not a lot changes here. This is the part that's been least touched. It's still the lyre-style lugs that first debuted in the early 1960s on the initial professional version of the Moonwatch. So we have inward bevels and outward bevels on the lugs, with the outward ones polished, and then the bevel line running from end to end with satination through the mid-case. Polish on the underside of the tachymeter scale. We have a aluminum insert on the top. The tachymeter can be used to gauge the speed of an object. You can see 500 units, probably something moving very fast, such as a race car. Fun fact, back in 1957, the initial Speedmaster was conceived and named accordingly, with the notion that it would be used primarily by drivers of fast cars and people working in the motorsports realm. It was only a matter of happenstance that half a decade later, astronauts took interest in flying these things on the initial American space flights. So the Speedmaster, born of land-bound speed, so it's not far-fetched to imagine that you might time or clock the speed of a race car with one of these. Now you can see it is a dramatically domed and cambered sapphire that's designed to give you a lot of the charm of a thermoplastic. Of course, the true NASA-flown moon watches today, they use this watch, but with what's known as a Hesselite crystal, basically plastic, because while sapphire is harder to scratch and thus more luxurious, in theory you could shatter it, whereas the Hesselite will crack but generally not shatter. No one wants debris, free-floating in zero gravity, which is why the moon watch, if you fly it no longer to the moon, but to the International Space Station, it has Hesselite. Okay, the dial, we have dished registers. We have a couple of vintage features here. Diagonally oriented dot adjacent to the 70 and what's known as the dot over 90 on the tack. Dished registers, we have an applique Omega logo, which traditionally would have been featured only on the column wheel Omega Speedmasters. Generally what are known as the pre-moon Speedmasters. We have white varnished hands that really pop against the dial base, and no shortage of luminescence, including the chronograph seconds hand. The watch is 50 meters water resistant, and it has a push-down crown, which I generally don't recommend for swimming, but according to Robert Jan Broer, who's an expert on the Speedmasters, I spoke to him about this, and he said Omega had expressed to him that when freshly serviced and annually water tested, the 50-meter push-down crown Moonwatch can be used for surface swimming. Well, there you have it, from not one but two authoritative sources. So you can see Omega was smart to put all of the advertising on the case back. There is a lot of text here. First watch worn on the moon, Co-Axial Master Chronometer. They kept it off the dial. Smart move. But it does express something about this new movement. Now, while it's still distantly Lemania based on the 1873 Bausch, I'm not even sure its early 1940s creator would recognize it at this point. So manual wind with a 50-hour power reserve. The balance is now free-sprung with an anti-magnetic silicon hairspring, and it features still a cam and a lateral clutch action, though these days the Omega, Lemania, and ETA tandem of engineering creates a cam action that is literally as crisp as the best column wheel I've ever experienced. There is no difference. Now, we still have a lateral clutch because it's a little bit more shock resistant than a vertical clutch, and that has functional benefits for NASA. Of course, these are still flown, so that matters. You can see that there's a little bit of jump when you start the chrono due to the lateral clutch, but again, very little. The engineering tolerances are so impressive now that only about 1 time out of 3 do you see any meaningful jump when you start up the chronograph. Taking a look at the reverse side now, the free-sprung architecture, the silicon hairspring, we still have a 3 hertz beat rate. We get a little bit more power reserve, 48 becomes 50, 18 joules becomes 26. There is a coaxial escapement here, which trades the sliding friction of a Swiss lever for the tangential friction of a double impulse direct and indirect impulsing coaxial, as envisioned by George Daniels and realized in series production by Omega. So it's got a fairly exotic escapement that does pay some benefits in power reserve, chronometry, and reduced maintenance requirements, and it probably is still the most exotic escapement you can get for under $50,000. Now, the finishing here, if I'm perfectly honest, it's attractive, but it's not quite as elaborate as what we used to get on the Sapphire Sandwich display caseback caliber 1863. I felt that particularly the beveling on bridges and really on the chronograph components was at a level that looked almost manually applied on those, whereas this merely looks expensive and clean. The other ones made me seriously wonder what was possible with the scope of robotics available. So lots to love here, and again, this is also upgraded in ways that may not be obvious, such as the first Speedmaster Moonwatch with a hacking seconds function. If you love this watch, reach out to Team Mosso at the 1916 Company for purchase and pricing details.